Hey, how you guys doing? It's Jeremy from jeremy.net. And here is my drawing board. So, I'm doing another fixing bad figure drawings. I go through some of my figure drawings from previous weeks, previous months, whatever. I save some drawings that did not come out well, and I redraw them. I've got a couple of reference books out. The Atlas of Human Anatomy for the Artist by Stephen Peck. This one I just have out because, in general, I'm likely to need it when I go through and just look up some anatomical reference to look at what I'm doing wrong and what adjustments I need to make. I already see some comments coming in the chat. I see Amaris Joseph popping in, says hi. Hi, Amaris. Happy to see you. Happy to have you here with me. Let's see. Now, this book is by Nathan Fowkes, a fantastic concept artist and art educator. Teaches a lot of drawing, painting, particularly some portrait stuff. And this book was recommended by one of my coworkers. Shout out to Paolo. I have found that even though the book teaches the Riley method, which is a lot more of, as opposed to constructing it volume oriented, it's a lot more shape oriented in terms of getting the shapes right on the figure. I found there's a lot of really great information in this book. And the reason why I specifically have this out here with me while I'm, excuse me, a little frog in my throat. The reason why I have this out here with me is because there's one specific section that I was looking at over the weekend, because this is the first time I've really started to dive deeply into this book. And it basically goes into exactly what I'm working on. Oh, damn, I see Trevor Nelson in the chat. Hey, good to see you, man. Thanks for stopping by. Let's see here. There's a section where he goes through and he has a lot of his students they said it's okay to share my drawings, in your book. And what he goes through is he shows like common mistakes that artists make. Strokes not wrapping around the form, figures end abruptly at the light and shadow. Basically, he goes through here and he looks at different mistakes that the students making, and they're not bad drawings. They're just the things that keep them from being elevated to being great drawings. And he'll do like a little redraw next to it to kind of show the fixes he makes. I see my nephew popped in, Clay. How you doing, Clay? Now that my nephew's here, I'm gonna have to try and keep the language clean. I'll try to occasionally I'll let a little curse slip, but not, we'll keep it clean here. Got the youngins showing up. Anyway, I'm Clay. Just to let you know, since I'm an artist, I'm showing people some of the artwork I work on and how I improve, how I try to improve. Let's see here. So, point being, the reason why I'm showing you this book is because this is kind of the main thing that I work on. Now, it's one thing to do a drawing and have someone who's an experienced illustrator. Let me adjust the lighting here. It's another thing to have an experienced illustrator show you the difference between some of the mistakes you make and how to just improve it and bring your drawings up a next level. But I have found that until I really truly internalize what these mistakes are, until I really redraw them myself and figure out how to stop making the mistake, it keeps happening over and over again. So this book is in essence what I'm trying to do. Instead of having someone there correcting my drawings, I try to take the knowledge that I've learned from taking figure drawing classes. I try to take other art reference books that I have around, and I see if I can just rework a drawing until I can get it to look, until I can fix the mistakes on my own. Because that's the thing. All of this really started when I was, let me bring this down a little bit. Because now I'm going to sit at the table and I want this to be at a comfortable height. I see Clay subscribed to my channel. Thank you, Clay. I hope you enjoy it. I'll be sharing a lot of my artwork on there. You can see what I'm up to every week. Okay, so there was a particular class, and it was not drawing heads. It was drawing, I think we were doing full body poses, but I had a pose with the knee that just came out horribly. And then when I ended up drawing a similar pose from a similar angle later on, I made the exact same mistake I made before. I'll start with a couple of, oh, wow. That's odd. Looked like the live stream dropped off for a second. Let's see, is it still recording? Okay, still recording. So, a couple of, I don't even remember where it was. Oh yeah, well anyway, I'm starting with head drawings because I'm taking a class right now on heads, hands, and feet. I see Ion Rocks popped into the chat too. Good to see you. All right. So, oh, there was one more thing that I wanted to note before we got started. I have finally started a Patreon account. So if you enjoy these videos, if you enjoy the comic book work that I've put out, and you would like to support them, you can just hop online, go to patreon.com/Jeremy, patreon.com/GERIMI. The account is brand new, so I don't have a ton of posts up there, but over the coming weeks, I'm going to add a bunch of work in progress of comics, including finished pages of the latest issue of Morningstar, some videos exclusive to Patreon, and a lot of work in progress content, so you can see exactly what I'm up to and how I make my comics. Clay also said I'm really good at drawing. Thank you, Clay. I feel like I have a lot to learn, and these videos I'm sharing are about me trying to learn those things. I mean, drawing, the whole point of drawing is to make things that are very difficult look easy. Doesn't mean that they're easy, you just try to make them look that way. But I still feel like I have a tremendous amount to learn. For instance, this head drawing over here, it may not look bad, but it does not capture the actual volume, the structure of the head. In terms of in terms of it being a three-dimensional object, it doesn't turn in space the way it should. The underside of the chin doesn't feel like it's turning and being the underside. It just feels like a really big chin. The head doesn't curve back at the proper volume that it should. It seems to be going up forward a little too much and not curving back over. And it also seems like there's a little bit, not enough of the backside of the skull. Now, I printed out a quick diagram just so that you could get an idea of the process that I'm looking at. This is from Andrew Loomis's Figure Drawing for All It's Worth. And this, in essence, is pretty much the process that I use for constructing heads. It's starting with the sphere and then having the front part of the face come down and then building the lower half below the nose, the lower jaw, just adding and building that onto this shape. There are some slight differences that I've learned specifically from the figure drawing instructor I've been studying with, Carl Ganas. So to see more on how he actually specifically constructs the figure, you should check out Carl Ganas on YouTube. Just search for his name, you'll find his videos there. He's got a ton of great educational content. So what I'm going to start with is real simple. I'm just looking at this head over here, starting with the simple sphere. And even this, I probably could make this sphere maybe a little rounder. I tend to squish them a little too much. And I think that is one of the leading problems in my figures not feeling rounded enough. So this isn't the center line of the face. This is just sort of the outer limit of the face. And that's something I'm kind of taking into account, is trying to make the volume and the silhouette agree with each other. Meaning that you can draw a face that might be two-dimensionally flat and have the features in the appropriate place, but it'll feel squishy and it won't feel like it's actually three-dimensional in space. It'll feel very flat. The other alternative is you can make things feel volumetric, but they will frequently not have the all of the features in the correct place. And the challenge is getting the two-dimensional aspects and the three-dimensional aspects of a form to line up, to work with each other. I'm slightly distracted by a ticking sound that's here happening off camera to the side, and it's one of my cats playing with their cat toys. Cats do tend to get irritated when you're doing anything that isn't paying attention to them. Now see, already I'm looking at this and saying, well, if I really want to have the head tilted up more, then I need to both increase this angle up here in terms of the brow being turned away, and I need to increase this angle down here at the bottom. And then the challenge is going to be how to make sure that this underside feels like an underside and not like just a massive jaw. This is also something I'm drawing a little bit slower than I usually do. And one of the reasons is because it is hard to draw and talk at the same time. But two, I was in class last week and we were doing some quick poses. And what I realized, and I constantly tweak my approach to figure drawing. I don't believe that there's one way to do anything. I think that if you just simply dogmatically stick to a process without changing it, you don't grow. You always need to tweak your process and ask yourself, well, how well do I know what I think I know? So one of the things that I have been trying to do is, instead of using a lot of lines, because my drawings tend to be scratchy. Like if you look at, I see American Swordfish also popped up in the chat. Great to see you. Thanks for stopping by. For instance, this drawing right here, there's a lot of multiple lines instead of one fluid line making the neck and one fluid line of it going up into the skull. And it's a habit that I've been fighting for most of my drawing life. And one of the things that I tried to do in figure drawing class this past week was make a concerted effort to draw slower, but to use fewer lines. And the hope was that I would still end up, like if we're doing a short pose, like a 2-minute pose or a 5-minute pose, that I would get the same results as I would drawing all of those scratchy lines, but that I would get them with a cleaner drawing. So, and it helped a little bit, but really I did end up getting a lot less done per drawing than I'm used to. But whenever you try something new, you have to accept the fact that you're going to fail more than you're going to succeed at the start. That's true of pretty much any creative endeavor. And even this, I noticed this is one of the things that the Nathan Fowlkes book that I showed you at the beginning, one of the things that he points out is not having your features lining up right. And I can tell that it's very, very subtle, but the line that makes the brow is not completely parallel with the line that I'm using that's sort of where the nose is, the base of the nose. And so I'm just going back and trying to even these up. This is not something that normally in a figure drawing class I would spend a lot of time on. I would just sort of like dash them in. But that's also the reason why they would be wrong a lot of the time, is because I didn't take the time to do it accurately. And my goal here is not to draw the perfect figure drawing, and it's not to have every measurement be perfect, but simply to take my time and fix what I see as mistakes. So the first thing that I'd mentioned was that the brow doesn't seem to be curving back quickly enough. And it's true that a lot of times the brow will go up first and then back, so that the front part, the lower part, like the real lower forehead, just above the brow, frequently that will go up a little bit and then slope back. But for the sake of this drawing, I'm just going to go ahead and slope it with the curve that I have here. I'm also going to bring these in a little bit, since there's going to be, it'll get wider out on this side, but you won't see that width on the far side of the figure. Just drawing the cheekbones. And a lot of the time when drawing, when I'm making repairs to a drawing, when I call it repairs, but it's me just analyzing it and figuring out what's wrong. A lot of the time, one of my go-to methods is to draw the bones of whatever I'm trying to look at, the actual skeleton. Because a lot of times the mistakes I'm making are basic structural problems. In fact, I have one figure drawing that I keep above my drawing board. And this is just sort of permanently there as a reminder to look at this anytime I've got drawing problems. So this one is a pose that I drew in figure drawing class. I thought that the model, I really thought the model did a great pose. And this was one of those where the knees were not right. And I noticed like that I made the legs too long for the torso, that the model should be reclining more. But I went back, and this is actually from an old session of me fixing bad figure drawings. But I went in and started drawing the bones inside of the figure. And then I went back on a different pose and sort of did the same thing. Because figuring out where the bones are located inside the volumes of the legs, the upper legs, the lower legs, the knees, the foot, the hips, placing those bones helps me figure out what are the structural mistakes I'm making. It's sort of like if you're putting up the drywall and you realize there's something's wrong with the building, and then x-raying it and looking at the frame of a house and saying, oh wait, this is not, you know, that load-bearing wall should be over here and not there. So in the case of this head drawing, right now I'm not even worried about her features. All I'm worried about really at this moment is just getting the skull right, getting the opening of the eye sockets right. And then from here, the base of the nose is there. Maybe add a slight curve to it since it's sort of rounding out from the muzzle. Let's see now. In this original drawing, the tip of the nose breaks the plane of the cheek. That means that her head is probably turned more to the left and higher up than I have it here with this figure. So I may come back in and do another quick small sketch just to try and get that in. But I'm looking at this, and right now, because this is the drawing I'm doing, this is also the fixes I'm making. So I'm not going to push it to what I see over there, only because it doesn't agree with the head I currently drew. And I do that sometimes. When I'm trying to fix stuff, I will realize that I don't have it at the exact angle as the original drawing. And then you have to decide, do I want to rejigger everything else in the drawing? Next time I'm gonna need to remember to set my phone so that it doesn't turn off. Normally when I have live streams going, it just stays on. I don't have to worry about it. But maybe there's some tweaks since OS 9 came out. I don't know if I got cut off there. But this right here is one of the big mistakes that I can look at with this drawing, is that the nose is not at the same angle as the facial plane. It's almost like her nose is broken and pointing off to the side of the head. So it could be, I could take the time to want to fix the whole head and have it pointing more away to match the nose. Or in this case, I'm straightening the nose a little bit to match the angle of the skull. And I think that this is probably the reason why I butchered this head so badly, is because the head is at a angle where it's like just past a 3/4. So a 3/4 is a common view that a lot of people look at, sort of a half-turned skull. Oh, hey. Look at this little guy. Right here. See, I try to keep my reference material always within arm's reach. So, you know, a 3/4 is pretty standard. You know, you're seeking equal amounts of front and side. And the challenge is that what I started blocking in, if you can see there, I actually started drawing it at a less than 3/4, a little bit more turned towards us and up. What it really should be, and I think I will do another sketch of this after I finish the one I'm doing now, is that the figure's turned just past 3/4. So it's just past where it would normally be a 3/4. So it's not like, because would be a full profile, and this isn't that much of a profile, but it's sort of like an extreme, like it's the middle ground between a 3/4 and a profile. So the turn is more extreme, and the fact that you're also looking up at it, yeah, well, see, that's the challenge, is getting it in just the right, getting the head the right place in space. This is probably pretty close to what I should be drawing. So I will probably come back and do another one where I have it at this level instead of what I'm doing now, which is like that. And I recommend everyone get some sort of skeleton. Like this tiny one, I have just kind of like hand reference. It's in a little tray full of art supplies by my desk. When I need to sit down and do a life study where I'll sit it out on a table and properly light it, this is a full-size skull replica I bought. And believe it or not, it was pretty reasonably priced. I paid less than $100 for this. I can't remember exactly how much it was, but I ordered it on Amazon somewhere. You know what? It might have been 120, but I want to say that it was something like 70 or 80 bucks. It's, you know, plastic. It's got a little lever for the skull cap to come off. The jaws are, there's a spring inside to pull the jaws shut. But, yeah, when I want to sit down and do an in-depth study of the skull, I will draw from this guy. And I have not done that recently enough. There's a lot of art supplies and a lot of art reference that I have that I don't use as often as I should. And that's one of the big challenges, to bring it back to my comic book work, is that I do the figure drawing and I do all of these studies to help improve my comic book work. But I don't necessarily have the time to sit down and just do those studies because I'm making comics. But you know, that's why doing a YouTube video like this is a good thing for me. I'm taking the time to actually show you all of the study that you need to go into in order to continue to develop as an artist. So, since I know that I'm going to draw another head, I'm going to try and speed up here and run through this drawing a little bit more. So dropping the ears back a little bit, the base of the skull coming out. You know, and a lot of these mistakes I make are also just not taking the time to properly perceive the model when I'm looking at them. Um, let's see here. By the way, you guys, let me know at any point if, as you're watching this, if it's dropping out, because I realize that I keep looking up and seeing that the camera on my phone went quiet. So if there's times when I'm on here and then it drops out and goes away, then I will make sure to keep a close eye on the camera. Because if it drops out and all I need to do is reopen it and it never stopped recording, then that just means I didn't see the chat for a little while. But if it's dropping out on your end, then I definitely need to watch that. So yeah, let me know if it keeps cutting out like that. Yeah, I got a little too caught up in the tones here. I don't really need to do all of this for what I was trying to study and fix. All right. Now, eyes are particularly something I have not spent enough time working on, which is weird because they are the window to the soul. They're the first thing we look at. As a cheat, and I don't recommend cheats, I'm just saying this is what I've been guilty of. But as a cheat, I usually will just put the eyes in shadow. And then it's just sort of like, oh, okay, they're kind of like set back a little bit. I don't have to worry about putting in detail. But I shouldn't be doing that. I should be learning how to properly put in the little reflections that are in an eye, the different levels of light and dark. The way she was drawn here, her brow had a little bit of an arch to it. She put her eyebrows on a little bit more. And this cheek feels like it could be a little rounder. All right. So let's try one. And this is another, it might seem weird to have just drawn that head and then immediately go to, oh, just draw the same thing over again. But this is part of the exercise, is looking at it and saying, well, what did I do wrong? I didn't place the head, I didn't place the plane of the face in the proper direction. So it's facing too much towards us as opposed to off to the side. So let's try another one. I'll draw it a little bit larger this time. And this time I went too far in the other direction, making the egg a little bit narrower vertically than it should be, or making the sphere narrower vertically. So let's put the brow line in. And this time we will intentionally have the center line kind of off to the side, which will mean that the ear will put that kind of over here. So we're definitely getting, this is a lot more of a profile view. Now, even this is sort of what I was worried about in terms of drawing too many lines. Like this is already feeling like I'm chasing something. And when I say I'm chasing something, I mean a lot of times, particularly when I'm in figure drawing class, I'm in front of the model. Ideally, after 30 seconds to a minute, you should have your pose locked in, like you should have your gesture locked in, and be constructing the actual volumes. And there are times when I will realize I don't quite have the gesture down. And while this isn't a gesture drawing, it's not a full body drawing, in terms of finding out what face direction the plane should be facing, how much of it should be profile versus front, how far up the head is tipped, working out those details, those are kind of the gesture for this drawing, is saying where is the head oriented in space. And when I have a time when I know I don't get that right away and I'm still sort of fighting it, that's when I'm like, I have to decide, am I going to spend the rest of my time trying to get it properly placed in space? Or am I going to move on knowing that the drawing doesn't fit the reference in front of me or what the model's doing? And an artist that is trained should be able to use the model as a jumping off point and say, all right, well, I'm going to have the head facing this way instead of that, and just keep drawing and make everything agree with the drawing that you have on your page instead of looking like what the model is doing. The challenge in that is that the model is still there for reference, and you may look up and grab a detail, the way that in the lid is curving down over the eye, or the turn of a wrist or the turn of a rib cage or the neck. And if you aren't thinking about the fact that you've changed your drawing from what the model is doing, then you may start adding details that don't agree. And that's one of the challenges of when a model slightly shifts. And they're human beings. It's very, very difficult for models to hold. Sometimes even a 5-minute pose can be agony for them, because if it's a challenging pose, it's like doing really, really intense yoga. It's normal for a model to slightly shift. They're not going to stay stone still the entire time. A shoulder may droop a little bit, or they may realize that they're getting tired and they may overcompensate and pull themselves up or adjust themselves to try and, not have the pose shift. And just in the act of doing that, the pose may shift a little bit more. And those tiny changes may make the difference between your pose agreeing with what the model is doing, or it looking like something very different, or subtly different, but enough that the drawing's going to feel just not quite right. And to be honest, those subtle differences, those are the things that get you. A big difference, between a profile and a 3/4 drawing, that's simple enough. Large changes, large differences, you can catch those. But it's the subtle changes in a figure, between someone being a completely front view and turn just the tiniest bit that makes it sort of like, if you draw it head on, it doesn't look right. But if you draw it more of a 3/4, it looks wrong because they're not turned that much. In fact, even with this, I just went right now. One of the things that I wasn't happy with is that I didn't feel like I was getting enough of the side of the head. But I realized that what I just did there, kind of defining the side plane and how far it's turned, I went too far. So the first time I drew it, I didn't go far enough. Second time I did it, I went too far. So now I'm trying to like, this is where this is where I originally had the cheekbone turning. Then I pulled it over here, making it more of a profile. I'm trying to do it somewhere in between. And all of this is happening much slower than I would be doing in figure drawing class. But the point is me taking my time and figuring out the things that I do wrong. You know, I don't go around, calling myself a master draftsman. I am someone who's currently working as a professional artist, but I am still a student in the sense that I am not a master draftsman. I have to use you should use a lot of reference, but I find that my reference is less about informing my drawing than it is about me correcting mistakes. And even that might be giving reference a short shrift, because reference gets a bad rap from people saying that you're copying or cheating, and there's no cheating in art. But my point is less about reference. My point is more about my approach, or the way I look at myself in terms of producing artwork, that I can never stop being a student. Whenever anyone says anything nice about my work and the quality of it, I am grateful for it. I really appreciate those things. But I am constantly working to learn and to grow. There's so many amazing artists that work in comic books and in illustration. And I look at their work, and it just reminds me that I can never rest on my laurels. I can never stop trying to grow. Okay. I was listening to a podcast about I believe it was a book I think it was Joanna Penn's podcast on writing and writing business, and one of the things she talked about was having a checklist of things that she does before I think before publishing any book, or it might have been before she does a live stream or a webinar. But one of the things, she mentioned was having that checklist. And I realize now, one of the things I did not do was set my phone so that it won't auto close after a certain amount of time. And I need to create a checklist so I remember to, one, turn on my do not disturb when I'm on and streaming, so that I don't get someone accidentally calling in while I'm trying to do this. And then two, I need to set it so it doesn't auto shut down, because I'm already noticing that while I was planning to be on for an hour, the amount of time I've been on drawing doesn't line up with the amount of time that my phone says I've been streaming. So that definitely means that it was cutting out during certain times when it went black. And I don't want that to happen. I want to make sure that everyone who's here gets to stay and enjoy the whole thing. And if they have any questions, people can ask. Let's see. Got some comments from Ion Rocks. What do I think about cinematic cartooning? And yes, the stream did start. It's back on. And he said, I think I may be talking to the How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way. Taking How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way too much to heart. What do you think of the need of dramatism? Or does a canned repertoire put you off? In my mind, I'm going backwards, purposely regressing, seeking simplicity. Well, what it sounds like you're asking is the difference between having sort of stock poses that you're using, if I'm interpreting the question correctly, versus really illustrating every scene with sort of a unique look and feel and composition and story beat. And I don't know if the two are necessarily at odds with each other. There's a book called Shot by Shot, which is a book about filmmaking, but it shows a large number of shots that that filmmakers use to for certain types of scenes. You know, for people entering a room, leaving a room, blocking a scene where you've got two characters in a in a car, or different ways to block conversations. It really comes down to blocking scenes in a film for different compositional purposes and for different types of storytelling mood. And I think that the poses that a comic book storyteller chooses to use, it is a mix of what you're taught illustration wise and personal style. Because on one hand, you may have a character and you want them to walk, they're just walking down a hall. You may look at it like, what is the clearest way to show that this character is walking down a hall? And you may just show them from a front view walking towards you. You may decide that you want it to feel eerie and creepy, or you may want the character to feel threatened. So you may be showing it from the angle of a security camera up on the wall. You don't actually have to have the time codes, but just that high angle in a dark room may convey the mood that you want. I think the first point should be clarity. And clarity can mean that you're just doing a simple stock 3/4 shot. And if there's a lot going on, or if the character's costumes are particularly complex, or if there's a lot going on in the scene, you may choose to do a less dramatic angle. I think that was something that Alex Toth talked about a lot. If you ever get to see the Alex Toth Doodle book, it's a collection of sketches and letters that he wrote to a young artist that he developed a pen pal relationship with. And in that, one of the things he constantly harped on was making sure that everything you did, forget about style, forget about drama, clarity is the number one thing. That things have to be clear in any given scene that you're drawing. And I do believe that clarity is probably the most important thing, but I do think it's also okay to deviate from that for style if it serves a purpose. Ideally, you want to have clarity and drama. But when it gets to the dramatic stuff, I think that means really, the way I'm interpreting your question is using unique storytelling angles and trying to push the angles as much as possible, as opposed to doing poses that tend to be a little bit more 3/4 head on, less dramatic, more stock. And that is a choice both of what works for the story and what works well for you. I think that dramatic storytelling angles do make whatever visual story you're telling more interesting, but they can be distracting. And I think we saw in the early ages of Image comics, Image got rightfully so taken to task, even though I love a lot of the Image creators. They got rightfully, taken to task for having books that were just like 24 pages of pinups and cool page compositions, but with no, but the stories were in some cases unreadable. And I think that you don't want to sacrifice the readability for the sake of dramatic angles. So I guess the real way I would answer it is be as dramatic as feels comfortable for you. It is possible to be too boring and to just do really, really stock poses that don't have anything interesting going on. And, you definitely want to keep your storytelling interesting. You don't want to make it, you just don't want to do it at the expense of clarity. So yeah, it's a personal choice, because some people don't tell super dramatic storytelling compositions. Like if you look at, I believe his name is Adrian Tomine, the guy who does Optic Nerve. He's not doing these really dramatic storytelling angles. He's doing these stories that are very slice of life about, human interaction, love, loss, alienation, and isolation. And these feel a lot more like indie movies than they do like blockbusters. And so it's a lot more about the interaction with the characters, or just a close up on someone's facial reaction to something that someone else said. and it's not about a cool dramatic angle. So it depends on the story that you're telling. It depends on what you're comfortable with as a visual storyteller. I think the reason why you're looking for answers is because you're asking a question that doesn't have one set answer. And this is why I frequently tell people you can ask all of the questions you want and learn, study the craft of comics as much as you want. But at a certain point, you have to learn by making, because you don't know what type of creator you are until you actually tell a story, and then you see how it comes out. And you may realize that as much as you love telling, damn it, phone clipped off again. All right, phone clipped off again. As much as you may love telling dramatic stories, or as much you may love telling horror stories, your style may be really oriented more towards superhero stuff, or vice versa. You may be somebody who wants to tell, superhero adventures, and your stuff just feels like everything is this dark, noirish, creepy angles and making the viewer feel unsettled. Or you maybe you draw really beautiful, evocative storytellings about them. Your compositions may focus a lot more on the emotions the characters are feeling and a lot less on action. And you may say, well, maybe I'd be better at doing like manga stories or doing romance comics or doing autobiographical or biographical stories. So on this drawing, I feel like the nose is more in line with the facial plane than it was on this one, but I also feel like the nose is too large. And I could just keep redrawing this one. If I were doing this on my own, I would probably just redraw this and redraw it until I got it to where I wanted it. But since you guys are here and watching me, I'm going to switch to something else. So let's see. All right. Let's get a new sheet here. So I'm getting a little bit lowered to the screen. So on here, there's two things. One, I didn't get around to drawing the legs, which I really wanted to on this, because drawing the knee when it's bent is one of my challenge areas. But two, the model had a really subtle, difficult to get twist in their waist, and having the arm, the shoulder on the right side pushed up, but still having the rib cage kind of slinking down and going into the pelvis. I feel like the breasts didn't properly attach to the torso. Like they feel like they're hanging down a little bit too low. And then having this arm crossing over it. I feel like all of these are something that a lot of figures drawing instructors would call out, saying that they feel like they are detached, like it's an assembly of parts instead of a full figure. And so that's why I wanted to come back and analyze this one. Now, since the stream kept dropping a little bit, I'm gonna go for probably like another 10 minutes or so. And then, so if anybody is watching and has questions, please feel free to jump in. And I apologize for the inconsistency of this stream. That was a little, that's something I'm gonna have to make sure that I set up beforehand with my little checklist, so that, we can have a nice, fluid conversation, interaction next time I'm on. So we start by just trying to get from the head to the torso, head to the bottom of the torso. Sometimes I make the pelvis too large just from the get-go, and I'm like, yeah, that doesn't look like what they're doing. And one of the things that I've been trying to pay more attention to is looking at the joints and saying, what is this joint lining up to? What is one elbow, like if I'm drawing one elbow, to look over and say, well, where is the other elbow in relationship to that? And in this drawing, it looks like I have the elbow almost overlapping. You know what? That might be an interesting challenge, is I wanted to not have a tangent by having this forearm overlapping the shoulder, but that may have also made the arm shorter than it needed to be, than it should have been. This is one where I actually kind of wish I could see the model and work out, like I wish I could see the model right now, because a lot of the times I can do a drawing and I can kind of see what I've done wrong and say, all right, I need to fix that. But in this one, I probably need a little bit more to see what's going on here. Like even the fact that I've got this, the way I drew this here, it's almost like I'm indicating the shoulder on the left is higher than the one going down, but that's definitely not what was happening. It feels like this arm, the way I drew it here, is almost, well, not almost, it's very definitely reaching across the form. It feels like it's reaching over and up. If anything, looking at this pose, I feel like I want to have the arm out further. I mean, have the arm sticking out further and then have this arm coming back up and over. Let's see. If I put the wrist over here. And now here's where things get tricky. It's sort of working in the parts that are hidden, the parts of the rib cage that are hidden by the arm going across it. And it's tricky not just because it's hidden, but as I put more detail in, not detail. Well, actually, that detail is a good word, because I don't want to put detail in. I want to put structure in. I don't want to put things, I don't want to show ribs just to show rib cages. What I want is to establish where the defining parts of this form are. You know, where is the center line that's running down the middle of the rib cage? And as I put structure in, there is a potential danger of me cluttering up this thing, which is complex. And I do not want to clutter up something that's already difficult to draw because it's complex. I want to simplify, if anything. In fact, that was something I was thinking about in looking at the Nathan Falk's book, because there's a lot of stuff where he mentions leaving out details that aren't helping the portrait or aren't describing what you want to describe. And I'm trying to wrap my head around the idea of saying, what can I get away with? When looking at the figure, saying, all right, what am I trying to say, and how little can I use to say it? And this isn't the same as cartooning, but it's distilling it down to what are the fewest lines I can use to tell the most. And this comes back to the thing I was saying earlier, the start of the stream, about trying to use fewer lines. I mean, yeah, drawing slower, but trying to use fewer lines. Yeah, I can already tell you, just in terms of looking at this drawing, I don't feel like this captured what I am going for. Because what I really want to get is that nice hanging damn it. Stream keeps jumping out. All right, so we're on again. Yeah, so I did not get this drape of the arm that I feel was very, if there's one thing that I did get from the pose, I mean, from my sketch, in terms of what I interpret happening in the pose, it's that draping of the arm that's crossing across the form. And now as I'm looking at this, I'm like, oh, well, I put the neck in the wrong place, because this arm is sort of framing where the neck is. It's sort of just in the, you know, this wrist is resting just on the far side of the neck. So if anything, I put it too close. Kind of like the way of putting an eyeball kind of too close to the nose. I kind of did the same thing with the neck. And if I look at the silhouette of the figure, I can even see how this juts out over the hand. That other head drawing that I did earlier, I kind of felt like I learned some stuff from going back and reanalyzing it. This one I think I'm going to hang on to and come back to again, because I don't feel like I've learned everything that I need to learn from this drawing. This is probably something I could sit and just draw for like a whole hour. Now that's interesting. I don't know if that would be boring to viewers, to have me just work on one drawing and just sit there and do it like 4 or 5 times, and you see all the different changes I go through. But this is my study process. That's how I learn what mistakes I'm making as I draw. The width of the figure isn't enough. There should definitely be more width to the shoulder, so that there's room to show this hand resting on top. And also the fact that I compressed it. On this drawing, I have the hand curving in a little bit more, whereas in the actual drawing, it's more like it's coming down and then out that way. And I've got it more compressed. Yeah, there's a lot to learn from this drawing. And I even see now that this arm is going, the hand is going all the way out to the far shoulder, whereas I have it almost like it's wrapping around. Well, you know what? Shit, what's the point in doing these if I'm not actually going to make the corrections, right? All right. So this is very much, I won't say it's a fail. What it is it's my first stab at trying to understand the flaws that I'm making in this drawing. I'm gonna save this particular piece, and the next time I do a fixing bad figure drawing, unless I have some other drawing that I really want to dive in with, I may come back and start out with this one and just do this one the whole time. Because there's a lot going on here that I need to address in my drawing, just getting both the twisting, the width of the torso, having that twist connect the upper torso with the pelvis. These are all things that I don't feel successfully came off. And I feel comfortable enough sharing that with you guys, because that's my whole point. It's me showing you my creative process, how I'm studying, what I'm trying to learn to grow and to make better art, to draw better comics. So we'll come back to this one again. And I think, other than that, we're going to wrap it up for today. So, as I mentioned at the start of the stream, I've got a Patreon on, patreon.com/GERIMI. You can also check out my newsletter. It's newsletter.gerimi. I will add links for both in the description of the video. Thank you so much for stopping by. If you guys have any more questions, leave them in the comments. And till next week, go be creative.